Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Laura Clark. I'm the director of the Whatcom Humane Society. On behalf of our board of directors and myself, I'd like to welcome you to our annual Woof Whiskers Awards luncheon. Thank you for being here. This is one of my favorite events. And I'm not going to lie, I am a bit of a crier. So for those of you who've never been to this before, I most likely will start weeping uncontrollably at some point during the ceremony. And the reason I say that is because this is the event that we at the Whatcom Humane Society get to say thank you. As a nonprofit, we can't do anything without the support of the community, our staff, our volunteers, our members, our supporters, businesses, community groups, and we rely so heavily on all of those people and all of those businesses and groups to care for the 5,000 domestic and wild animals that come through our doors. So this is just our way to single out a few special folks for going above and beyond the paw of duty to help animals in our shelters and in our community. And today we are here to recognize and acknowledge and honor 4 special folks or groups who have really defined kindness, respect, and compassion in regards to animals not only in our shelter, but in our community and beyond. And I really look forward to telling their story today, and I think you will enjoy hearing about them as much as we enjoy telling you about them. But before we get started with the program, I'd like to thank the very important sponsors who make this event possible. And I'd like to start with our folks at WeCoo who are here. WeCoo, could you please stand and be recognized? And on behalf of myself personally, I apologize for the overdrafts. I am working on that. I am so sorry. I'll get better. The folks at WeCoo are such good friends, and they actually, a couple times a year, donate their services and their employees to both our farm facility and our wildlife rehabilitation center. So it just, you know, our sponsors go above and beyond as well. So thank you, WeCoo. I'd also like to thank our folks at Scratch and Peck Feed. They're not here today, but they not only support our wonderful events, and they're a great locally owned business, but they also donate all the chicken feed to the shelter chickens, and we get a lot, and so we greatly appreciate their generosity and everything that they do in our community. So if you are a chicken person, check out Scratch and Peck Feed, because my chickens give it 2 feathers up. They think it's the bomb. And Hazel the dog is also not here, but her mom has sponsored this event in her honor. Hazel is a dog that came to us last fall, part of an animal control seizure involving 80+ animals. And she was an older bearded collie mix that our veterinary clinic nursed back to health, and she is now a very, very loved dog in her home. So thank you, Hazel. And I was talking earlier to one of our awardees over at Table 6 today, and I said, you know, this is the only Humane Society event that we do where we don't drink alcohol. So it's a little tough for me to get through personally, but when we do have those events, you can count on there being beer from everyone's favorite brewery, the North Fork Brewery, and they are here. Vicki Savage, could you please stand and be recognized? Not only the best beer and pizza anywhere, but you can also get married there, and I did. Just saying. And I'm not lying about that, and my dogs were the maid of honor and best man, and it was the best wedding ever. And is Bobby Ruth Langley here? Bobby Ruth, where are you? Could you please stand from Life Cycle Pet Cremation? You provide such an amazing service to our community. Thank you very much. And life cycle pet cremation, I know it's one of those tough topics to talk about, but Bobby Ruth is very involved in our monthly pet loss support group that we offer the community. And last night at that meeting, she dropped off some incredible kids handouts that help kids deal with the loss of their pet. And we were looking through those this morning, and they're really wonderful. Thank you, Bobby Ruth. Thank you, Life Cycle. Did I forget any of our wonderful sponsors? I'm notorious for forgetting sponsors. I want to make sure I didn't forget anybody. Also want to let everybody know before we get started that we are filming Pet Watch, the Whatcom Humane Society's television show here today, so you can see yourselves on TV, on Comcast, on demand, channel 26, and also on BTV channel 10. And the show also airs on the Humane Society's YouTube channel. And Deb Logan, who's here today, who was one of the original creators of Pet Watch, along with our current producer, Russ Nelson, just informed me that this is the 20th anniversary of Pet Watch. How cool is that? All right. So just so you know, before we really get going, if anyone needs to eat, drink, and be merry, feel free to do so. This is a Humane Society event, and we're all very food motivated, so don't be shy about getting up and getting yourself some more wonderful food. And I do want to thank the Northwood Hall for having us here, and I also want to thank our great staff, Dana Brown, our events manager, and all our great staff and volunteers for being here. Please give them a round of applause. All right, our first honoree today is Pet Stop in Seahome Village. And I'm not going to look at him because I will start crying. But I started at the Whatcom Humane Society 15 years ago. And two of the first folks I met were Alan and Barbara Gardner, the owners of this little pet supply store in Seahome Village called Pet Stop. And I went down and introduced myself. And little did I know how important this group of folks would be to our shelter animals and our community. I sat down last night and I took a piece of paper and I just started kind of writing some notes about what these folks have done over the years for the Whatcom Humane Society. And soon I filled up one sheet of paper and I had to get up and I had to go get another piece of paper. And then I had to go get another piece of paper and another piece of paper. And then I went to bed and I thought, oh my gosh, but I forgot about that. And I had to get up and scribble on the piece of paper. And then this morning in the shower, I remembered another thing that they did and I had to scribble it down. Then I had to sit down at my desk this morning and start to transcribe because the list is so long. And what I really started thinking was this is a little locally owned mom and pop business. They're a little storefront there in Seahome Village. And over the course of all these years, they have had to compete with big box chain stores, 2 here in Whatcom County, the expansion of various farmers co-ops that have moved into their neighborhoods, other smaller locally owned pet supply stores that have come and gone. And really what these folks do, what Alan and Barbara do at the Pet Stop, surpass what all of these other businesses do combined. This little mom and pop business combined. It's amazing. They never say no, which is really a blessing and a curse for them, because we know they never say no. They give all Humane Society adopters a discount in their store. For life, for the life of that animal. Prominently displayed, there is a donation bin at their front counter, so as you're spending your money, you can spend some more money and either buy some supplies for the shelter animals or drop some cash in there. They sell our calendar every year. They have made for many years a commitment not to sell live animals. They have made a commitment for many years not to sell shock collars, pinch collars, or choke chains. They only recommend dog trainers that use positive reward-based dog training. And they support so many other groups, so many other animal welfare groups. The annual Bellingham Parks Department Kids Dog Show, other rescue groups, our friends at Friends for Life. And speaking of Friends for Life, a former recipient of this award, their founder, Ms. Angela Lenz, and also the owner of Tails a Wagon Doggy Daycare, has asked to say a few words about Pet Stop, and I'd like you to welcome her to the stage, please. Going to need to speak into the microphone.
Oh,
yes.
I will. Hi, everybody. So first, before I get started, if any of you have been to this event before, you may recognize me, only known as the crier. I start to cry, and then you start to cry. It's a thing. So we won't do that today, because this is about really talking about a business that is close to my heart. So as a small business owner myself, I think that we have an obligation to give back to our community. And not all businesses get that. A lot do, but not all of us. And so Pet Stop has gotten that for as long as I've been in business. They've been in business since '93. I started in '97. And so I've known them as long as Tails has been around. And certainly when I formed the nonprofit organization Friends for Life, they have just been immensely helpful in everything that I do with local rescue groups or with Friends for Life or working with a shelter. Again, I completely agree with Laura. They never say no. So from one small business owner to another, I thank you for that. On another note, I thought I'd share a little story. So Bellingham, the city that Bellingham is now, is a very different city than it was when we started our business. So for me, 19, 20 years ago, for them, gosh, so much older. So, absolutely. So, well, I'm getting to my story. So, we know that there's this contest that goes around Bellingham once a year. It's called the Best of Bellingham. So it's now kind of this big deal now. It's online, and you go and you log in, and you vote, and it's a big deal. Well, it used to be, 20 years ago, this tiny little quarter page in the Cascadia Weekly. You'd have to handwrite in your answer and then mail it in. Who remembers that? They didn't even have a pet category back then. But they did have a category that I'm not 100% sure that they still have, but the category was, what is the best rumor you ever heard in Bellingham? Yes, I'm telling the story. And I am proud to say, for 3 years in a row, the rumor was that Alan and Barbara from Pet Stop were the parents of Angie from Tails a Wagging. It was the best. So I encourage us all to raise our glasses. I don't have one, but in symbolic I do, to congratulate my friends and my parents and Barbara and Alan from Pet Stop. Thank you.
I can only imagine what Thanksgiving at the Gardner house is like with Angie Lenz there. It must just be quite something. So I'm not done talking about Pet Stop yet, because there is much, much more. How many people in this room have been to the Dog Days of Summer event at Lake Padden? Humane Society's great, great dog festival. Well, that festival was created by myself about 15 years ago with help of Angela Lenz there and many other people. And that event would not happen without Pet Stop. Almost every single donation that is given away, the pet food samples, the toys as prizes for the games and contests, you see the little girl standing on that big mound of dirt there? That's Hound Hill. and that Hound Hill is stuffed with dog toys and treats. It's the one day of the year your dog doesn't get into trouble for digging and they get to keep whatever they find. Everything in Hound Hill comes from Pet Stop. These folks put the screws to their vendors all year long to compile and collect supplies for the dog days of summer. And about a week before the event, we send multiple trucks to their warehouse to pick up the supplies for that event. It wouldn't happen. It would look drastically different without their invaluable efforts at that event. It's amazing. And if that weren't enough, there's more. Our cat colony room in our new shelter, when you drive up and you see the cats perched in the windows, those perches come from Pet Stop. If you sit on a bench outside of our new shelter, the benches came from Pet Stop. Every Thanksgiving, I get a call and they say, how many dogs or cats are in the shelter? And I tell them. And a big delivery of Thanksgiving Day dog and cat food arrives. So on Thanksgiving, the animals can have a special dinner. This has been going on for years. Not only that, but do you see the giant stack of burritos? Occasionally, they burrito bomb our staff and deliver food. Hello? They also do things like deliver dog biscuits to local businesses, including the North Fork Brewery, who bag them up and sell them for donations. So they're helping other organizations fundraise for our organization. They recently underwrote the cost for free microchips for low-income senior citizens who want to get their pets microchipped. There simply is no end to their generosity and what they will do for the animals in our shelters. They walk the walk and they talk the talk, and I am so proud to call them my friends. And this community should be very, very proud to call them friends as well. So it is with great pleasure that I give this year's Woof and Whisker Award to Alan and Barbara Gardner from Pet Stop.
You know, it feels like, I don't know if you all remember the old Romper Room show where the teacher would hold up the mirror and go, oh, I see, you know, Vicky and Andy and Sharon and Beverly and Laura, you know, all the names. It's kind of what it feels like now. Yeah, well, you saw the pictures. Angie is not our daughter, but oftentimes, and we are old enough, so I can see how that happened. You know, when an organization that does what they do, the people that should be receiving these kind of awards, gives you an award, it's a big deal. And we're so appreciative, and I didn't know we did all that. We'll have to talk about this. And as far as saying no, I think between Laura and Angie, that would be an impossibility because they could put the hurt on us. So no is not part of the vocabulary, absolutely. But I just want to thank them this is amazing, it's terrific, it's the coolest thing ever, and we're just happy to be a part of Whatcom Humane and the incredible work they do, and just this community in general. You know, we moved here 23 years ago from a little town down south called Los Angeles, and you may have heard of it, it was in the news not long ago, and to just be accepted and to be part of this total wonderfulness is really thanks enough, but it's just wonderful. And I don't know, you got anything to add?
The Humane Society has to deal with the toughest humans sometimes and the way they treat animals. We get to deal with the best humans, and they really love their pets. And I think it's ironic that they're honoring us when we really want to honor them. They're doing the hard job. We're just capitalists. We're just out there dealing with the cream of the crop. You guys have the tough job.
Turns out we're also nonprofit, but that was an accident.
That wasn't on purpose.
Well, no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one last thing on the whole daughter thing. I am quite sure that if you actually were her parent, she would be grounded for life because she's a bit of a troublemaker, so. All right, so we are moving from domestics to wildlife. About 2 years ago, our organization had the great privilege to take on a wildlife rehabilitation center here in Whatcom County because there was a need. And that has been quite a learning experience for us, and we are still learning on how to properly fund and operate such a service. We are very lucky that we have a great staff and a wonderful group of volunteers and supporters in our community to help us care for those animals. And this year we anticipate about 1,800 injured and orphaned native wild animals will come through the doors of what is a tiny little house out at Nugent's Corner off Mount Baker Highway. And it was last spring, actually, that I got an email from Alicia Ellsby, who is our Wildlife Rehabilitation Center manager and a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. And it's not uncommon to get little updates because I'm not at the center all day, so communication is always key. And so Alicia sent me this little email, and it just kind of gave me a heads up. I'll read a little bit of it. It said, "Hey, Laura, we had a pretty amazing rescue today. We had a great horned owl that was caught in fishing kite line off of a road off Mission Road in Bellingham. She was hanging by her wing off of a flimsy willow tree over a swamp, so our staff couldn't get to her. Luckily, the homeowner, Denny Neuendorp, knew a bucket truck driver from Mount Baker Cable named Dan, and Dan drove all the way up from Skagit to help get this owl. It was pretty cool. Let me know what you think." Alicia. Okay. So, on that note, Alicia is here, and I would love her to tell this amazing story and about this amazing group of folks from this little property off of Bellingham and the rescue of this owl. So please welcome Alicia Ellsby.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alicia. I just want to say thank you to Laura for having me speak here and talk to you about this amazing, brave little owl and the community that came together to save her, essentially. Wildlife rehab is a tireless job, and often we see heartbreak. So when we get to see a release of something as magnificent as a great horned owl, it's truly amazing, and it definitely makes what we do, just reaffirms everything positive. So in May 2015, we got a call from a concerned citizen about a great horned owl that was stuck hanging by her wing by some kite line or fishing line. It was kind of hard to tell over the phone what was going on, and she was just suspended. They had no idea how long she'd been there. They had no idea what kind of condition she was in, and they feared she might have been dead. So right away, my coworker Sarah and I looked at each other and were like, oh no, this is not good. Usually with birds that are suspended or hanging in fishing line, it's never a good outcome because they are suffering from dehydration, they're suffering from fractures, and they're not able to regain flight usually. And with a species like an owl, it's essential that they can fly 100% because they're having to hunt. So their food, like, a gull, for instance, they're kind of scavengers, so they're able to get food off the ground. An owl cannot do that. They need to hunt. So we were initially worried, but we jumped in the Wildlife Center truck, drove down to a little place off the Mission Road, and saw this owl and went, oh boy, she's in even more of a pickle than we thought. Not only was she caught way up, hanging by this kite fishing line, but she was in a place that we couldn't reach her. She was in a little tiny willow tree that had just flopped over due to her weight over a swamp that we could not walk in. We had our hip waders, we had everything ready to go. So we're standing there looking, going, oh, what do we do? And the kite and fishing line was on this willow tree and also suspended way up into a coniferous tree. And so we're like, well, maybe we can climb up that coniferous tree, snap the line, and we can rescue her. But then we looked at where the lines actually went. The sunshine kind of helped reflect off it. And we were able to see that if we did that, we would really risk damaging her further because she would probably have a bit of a fall. And if she was too weak to regain flight and flap, she would just crash to the ground, which that's not a good option either. So we sat there. Then Denny and his family came out and we were able to meet them, and he's kind of like, I've been looking at her too, trying to figure out what we can do. We threw some ideas around about how we could snap the line and save her, what we could do. And then she started showing a little bit of life and some promise. You know, she kind of perked up a little bit. She was able to grab a little branch on that willow tree and perch, so she was taking some of that pressure off of her wing herself. It's pretty amazing how resourceful these wild animals get and their will to live. I mean, at that point, I'm sure she had been struggling for quite some time trying to free herself, and now it was like a new energy of, okay, let's see what we can do. So that definitely inspired us, with the help of the caller and Denny, to be like, all right, guys, what do you think? We also work with some volunteer tree climbers, and they'll help us with these types of rescues. So we gave a call in to Joe, one of our tree climbers, and said, hey, can you come on out and assess this, because we can't get to her. So he loaded up his spurs, he loaded up his gear, he came on out, and kind of the same thing. It was, shoot, how are we going to get to her? There's no ladder long enough. There's no tree we can climb. We even threw around the idea of a fire department, but it just so happened that there was a big fire that day in somewhere in Whatcom County, and so all the fire engines with their ladders were tied up with that. So we went, okay, we got to get resourceful. And then Denny had mentioned that one of his neighbors, Dan, who owns Mount Baker Cable, has a bucket truck. And we were like, geez, that just might do the trick to allow us to get up high enough and over that swamp where we couldn't walk on, to see if we could get her. So we put in the call. Dan said, of course, except for there was one hitch in this plan. All the trucks were in Mount Vernon. We were like, okay. And he was so gracious, and his staff was so gracious, to have a volunteer staff member drive one of their trucks up all the way from Mount Vernon. It was about an hour-plus commute, to donate their time to bring a bucket truck for this owl. So we all had a rejoicing moment and hooped and hollered and cheered that we were having a shot at getting this beautiful creature out of this tree. So when the bucket truck driver arrived, we assessed the situation. He said, no problem, we should be able to get the bucket up there. And we thought, hallelujah. Joe hopped in that bucket, the bucket driver maneuvered him up, and he was able to safely contain that owl, who at that point, you know, knew something was going on. So she was a little spooked and a little stressed, but they were able to safely contain her, cut that line so it didn't damage her further. And then we were able to get her down and get her into her carrier here. So here she is, finally placed into this carrier, and just, you can see those big, beautiful yellow eyes. She's just looking around, and, you know, freedom at last. And so when we have something like this, we can't just re-release them. So we were able to bring her back to the Wildlife Center and take a look and see what's going on, and we found that she was suffering from dehydration. Her primary flight feathers right here were all twisted, and the barbs weren't connecting properly, so she wasn't able to fly well. And she also had some broken metacarpals, so these bones right here. So we were kind of like, oh boy, this is a guarded prognosis, because as we talked about earlier, these owls need to be able to fly 100%. So we did what we could. We got her started on some IV fluids, we got her started on some pain medications, some anti-inflammatories, and we wrapped that wing to allow it to heal and allow her time to have the ligaments go back in place that had been stretched from being suspended for this long. So after some time, she started perking up. She wanted to eat. She wanted to, you know, clack her beak at us. She wanted to basically say, stay away from me. So these are all excellent signs with wildlife. We want to see them get mad at us and get angry, because we know that they're in survival mode and definitely wanting to perk up and regain what they have lost by being injured. And so then we were able to take that wrap off after a couple weeks. Her bones had healed. She was preening her feathers on her own. Then we were able to move her to a room where she could test, like just flapping her wings. And at first, one was still drooping. And so we're like, uh-oh, if it's drooping, she's not going to be able to fly well. But over the course of the next week and just physical therapy, she was able to hold them even. And so we're like, this is a good sign. Her feathers had preened out. Her fractures had healed. She was eating and drinking and making amazing progress. So then we were able to move her outside to one of our flight cages. This is where we can condition an animal for release. She has a huge flight enclosure where she can go back and forth, up and down, do the swoops and curves that she needs, that we know that she can be released. And then we can also make sure that she can hunt. If she can't hunt, then we can't release an animal who can't feed themselves. So she successfully hunted, she successfully flew, she could bank, she could dive, she could do what a normal owl needed to do. And so we thought, hooray, this really big long shot with this amazing rescue is actually starting to take shape into a release. So we coordinate with Fish and Wildlife about where, is a good place to release these guys, if they should be released. So we kind of told them that story, and they were amazed as well by how she was able to recover and how she was flying, after being up for who knows how long. So then came release day. July 1st of last year was her day back for freedom. We let, Denny and his family know, Dan and his family know that, hey, we want to put her back where she came from. That's her home, that's her territory. She's not at many risk, other than that line, which Denny did remove for us, so it was gone, that, she would get in trouble. So we thought this is a beautiful spot to let her back. They have a beautiful property with a farm, and that's where she's used to hunting, that's where she's used to calling home. So we gathered her up and met out with everybody at the facility and went from there, and then gathered around and told her story. And release of wildlife is always so unpredictable. We never know what they're going to do. They could just sit there, they could fly, they could, kind of fly a little bit and drop. Nothing to do with medical aspect as much as their stress level. If we're letting something be released and it's scared, it's just going to want to hunker down and freeze until we back off a little. So we really didn't know what was going to happen with her, and as you can see, we let her go, and she flew beautifully. It was such an amazing, it was probably one of my favorite release I have ever seen in my life. She took off, she flew quite a distance, she was able to swoop and come up again, and as you can see, those end flight feathers are flawless. Everything had worked out well for her. She was able to do what maneuver she needed to do, and so we were just awestruck at the beauty of this creature, and that we were able to, come together as a community and rescue her. When you're around the Wildlife Center, you'll often hear us say, we are here for the animals. And as, cliche as that sounds, it's really true. These guys have no one else. They have no owners. They have no one looking out for them. So they're on their own when they get stuck. It's definitely up to callers to find them and call us. And so, again, for me, I've been doing this for quite a few years now. I was quite humbled by the effort that Danny and his family, Dan and his family, the callers, everybody who was involved with this, the lengths they went to help this magnificent creature is truly humbling, and makes this wildlife rehab all, makes it part of our job and makes it all worth it. So I want to extend a huge thank you, and, good job, everybody. You saved an important life, and I feel really blessed and honored that we could be part of this. So thank you very much.
I want to thank Alicia and her great staff. And when she says she's been doing this for a long time, clearly you started when you were 3, because I don't. But great job. On behalf of everyone at the Whatcom Humane Society, I'd like to ask the Neuendorf family and Mount Baker Cable to please come up and accept this year's Woof and Whisker Award.
I would do it again.
Yeah. It's good to have friends like Dan that are able to drop everything and show up to do something like that. We need more of that kind of stuff going on. And also, anybody that flies a kite with fishing line, if I catch you, I'm going to whoop your butt. Not good stuff.
Yeah. I appreciate this. It's very nice. Thank you.
Mr. Neuendorf, we love your attitude, and just so you know, we do have a full-time opening in our animal control department if you're interested. Just saying. You can talk to Captain Evans, who's here. Just on one last note about this amazing owl rescue, when we released the owl, I had the opportunity to be there, and we invited the Bellingham Herald out to cover the story because it was such a cool rescue. And so Alicia gave me the address and I pulled up to the house and I'm thinking there'll be, 2, 3 cars. The whole street, and this is not a big street, the whole street has got cars like there's a block party going on. And I'm like, what is going on here? Well, the Neuendorfs had invited all the neighbors and Mount Baker Cable, and it was so cool because this whole neighborhood came together to watch this owl be released. And it was just so neat in the middle of a weekday in the middle of the summer for a group of folks to come together just to be so happy that a wild animal got to go be wild again. It was really a neat thing, so really cool.
Can I say one more thing?
You absolutely can.
About 3 days later, we always sleep with our windows open, and after about 3 days that owl's released, we could hear 2 owls talking back and forth to each other, and I'm pretty sure it was this one here and its mate.
It was a love connection. The Whatcom Humane Society is an open admission facility, and we take in any animal in need. And I often say from hamsters to horses and anything in between. And since 2010, our farm facility up in northern Whatcom County has received 119 horses. And of those 119 horses, I am fairly confident that 119 of them needed some type of extensive medical care because, to be perfectly honest, we don't get healthy horses at the Whatcom Humane Society. By the time they end up at our barn, they have been the victims of abuse or neglect, or they've been abandoned. They're underweight, their hooves are overgrown, their teeth are overgrown, they have behavior problems, and they need help, and they have nowhere else to turn. So we open our doors for them and we do the best we can, and thankfully the great folks at Colshan Vet are always there for us. And it's not just the horses. Our barn facility also gets cows, sheep, goats, donkeys, alpacas, llamas, and pigs. And our staff veterinarian, Dr. Rounds, who takes care of all of our domestic animals, will pretty much do anything to not have to take care of a pig. So she is really happy that Colshan Vet is available for that duty as well. It's just a few of the horses that have come through, but there's so many. Taking care of horses is a whole different ballgame. These are big animals, and while we have the ability to provide basic care for them, it really takes specialized equine veterinarians to provide them with the care they need so we can successfully rehabilitate them and place them into new homes. And we are so thankful for Dr. Plotz, Dr. Anderson, Dr. DeJong, Dr. Hammond, but especially, we try not to play favorites, but we have one, Dr. Sauter. For everything that they do, these folks are on call 24/7 for us. And inevitably, if there is a horse emergency, it's going to happen on a Sunday night at 10 o'clock. And we will call Colshan Vet, and one of their amazing veterinarians will come out and do whatever needs to be done for these animals. 119 animals. That's a lot of horses to care for. And when I started thinking, well, of all of those animals, do we have a story or two to tell? And really, it's 2 of the horses that are currently in our care who really stuck in my mind, and I'd like to tell you about them. First is Mojo, and Mojo arrived to our facility last October in that condition. Animal control, our animal control officer seized him, and his owner is facing animal cruelty charges. He was near death, and thankfully, between our farm caretakers and our farm volunteers and Colshan Vet, we were able to help him gain over 200 pounds through soaking his food 4 to 5 small meals a day. He's now down to almost regular feeds. His teeth were so uneven and cracked that he would try and eat, but the food would just fall out of his mouth. And Dr. Sauter came out, and once he was stable enough, floated his teeth, which is basically like the worst dental appointment you've ever had in your life. And while we did film that, we thought people are eating. We won't show it to you because you would either immediately run to your car and start flossing, or you would get really nauseous, because if you've ever seen a horse's teeth floated, it basically involves Dr. Sauter getting on welding gear and prying the horse's mouth open and then taking these giant saws and going in and trying to file the horse's teeth down so they can eat. And unfortunately, Mojo's teeth are so bad that there was only so much that Dr. Sauter could do, but he's been able to make Mojo comfortable now. And Mojo has gained, like I said, over 200 pounds and is now available for adoption. And we have a video I'd like to show you, just showing you Mojo now. It's a little bit choppy, but you can see him now actually getting to be a horse. And he's just such a handsome boy. So just saying, if anyone out there is looking for a senior horse to love, he would love a pasture friend. He gets very attached to some of the other horses in our care, and so he's just looking for a buddy. So the other horse I'd like to tell you about is a horse named Snickers. And she's not really a horse, she's sort of a muppet. I mean, horse is a long shot there. Snickers also came to us last fall, was seized by animal control. I know this is kind of tough to hear, but she was the victim of sexual assault by two really terrible human beings who have also been charged with animal cruelty. If that thought isn't bad enough, she also arrived suffering from such severe bronchial problems that she was having trouble just breathing in general. She was gasping for breath. Her lungs were scarred, and she had infection in her eyes, her lungs, pretty much throughout her entire body. And I won't forget the night she was brought in. I went to see her, and she was standing in one of the stalls in our barn, and she's so tiny that you couldn't even see there was anything in there. And she was standing with her head pressed against the concrete and just wheezing. And I've been doing this a long time. It's pretty hard to shock me or really kind of hit me. You know, you get desensitized because you kind of have to sometimes. And my heart just bled for this horse. And I thought, oh, what are we going to do with this poor animal? Can we save her? What can we do? And Colshan Vet was right there. And they put her on a tremendous amount of medical prescriptions. She had an inhaler, she had antibiotics, and they treated her every couple of days for weeks, and slowly but surely she started to improve. And she went from being this listless, sad animal that just, you could just see the sorrow in her eyes, to just kind of being a little bit of a goofball. And I don't know if any of you have seen the commercial that's out now where the lady gets the dog door for her mini horse. I really think she needs a little dog door because she's very dog-like. And we wouldn't have been able to save this horse without Colshan Veterinary Hospital. And one of our volunteers made a video about Snickers, and it has some sappy music, but it's not Sarah McLachlan sappy. But I'd like to show it to you now because this is Snickers today. you'll have to envision her with her long blonde mane now, running with the caretaker at the farm and rolling on her back like a dog does in your house. She has made a full recovery, and I am so happy to report that last year's recipient of this Woof and Whisker Award, Dr. Christine Monroe from Maplewood Animal Hospital, is adopting her. So that is a victory for her. So words can't express to Colshan Veterinary Hospital how much we appreciate you folks. And on behalf of the 119 horses and all of the other animals who have come through our barn facility, we want to thank you, and especially to you, Dr. Sauter. There is no greater friend to the equines in our community than you are. So please welcome Colshan Veterinary Hospital.
Thank you. We feel like at Colshan, it's really an honor and a privilege to work for the Humane Society. It is what we do every day, really, and we have some of the same core values. We just have different roles in the community, but our primary mission is to look after the animal welfare and their health, try to prevent and relieve animal suffering. And so we're just grateful that we can give our part to the Humane Society in those efforts. And we recognize that their job is extremely difficult. And so we're just happy that we can help in every little way that we can. And we also admire the courage they have, because their job is very difficult. So thank you again. This is Olivia, by the way. One more thing, I can't forget how important our staff is at Colshan to us, too. We know how important your staff is to you, and we see them and their dedication and commitment to what they do. And I'd like to recognize our staff, too, at Colshan, too, including Olivia, who's one of our large animal veterinary assistants, and she helps keep us going in the right direction and keeps us working more efficiently and safely. So thank you very much.
I have one more quick Dr. Sauter story. Sorry, Dr. Sauter, but it was a few years ago we had received, I think it was 8 stallions from a very highly publicized case that I won't go into the details, but they were the biggest horses I've ever seen in my life, to the point where they were completely freaky. They were so big. And one afternoon, one of the stallions broke out of his stall and went down our barn and got in a fight with another stallion. And so they were in this stallion fight. And it just so happened at the time we also had a pony about the same size as Snickers who decided he was going to break up the fight. And he was like, I'm going to break this fight up. He's this tall. It was just a nightmare. There was gashes on horses and wounds, and we called Dr. Sauter, and he came out, and I'm not kidding, these horses were the biggest thing ever. And so Dr. Sauter, who you've now just seen, starts treating one of these horses who's striking, and he's trying to get blood from one of them. And so I'm in front of him, the horse is behind in a stall, and he's talking to me, but while he's talking to me, explaining what's going on, he has his arms behind him, not even looking, he's taking blood, he's stitching things, and he's like, yeah, I think it's gonna be okay, we'll just do this. And I'm just like, what is going on? How is he doing this? I'm afraid to even be in the barn with these animals, and he's not even looking and stitching them up, and this horse is striking at him. The man is Whatcom County's horse whisperer, and he's amazing. He's amazing. Well, I would like just to give a round of applause to all of our honorees today. You guys are wonderful. And I'd also like, many of you heard some barking and might have met a couple of the four-legged guests that were here, and I'd actually like to invite them up. Sadie the dog with her dad, Captain Paul Evans from our Animal Control Department, and Faye the dog, whose mom is Alicia Ellsby from our Wildlife Center, who is somewhere making their way up. And you know, we've talked a lot about domestic animals and wild animals and horses, and I'd like to bring it back to why we're here today to support the Whatcom Humane Society and tell a little story about how, as an employee at the Whatcom Humane Society, we are always asked daily, how do you not take every animal home? And it's actually a really easy question to answer. You know your limitations or you don't last at an animal shelter. But sometimes the animal picks you. And that is the case with these two animals. Faye, when you look at her, you don't quite notice what's going on. And then you get a little closer and you think, what's going on with those eyes? Well, she has none. That's what's going on with them. She arrived at our facility a scared little stray with eyes so badly infected, they were bleeding, and our veterinary clinic actually had to remove them. And she needed weeks and weeks of rehabilitation and recovery, and then she needed to find a very, very special home that could overlook her disability and realize that she's not handicapped, she's handy-capable. And she found that home with Alicia. And Alicia, yes. Alicia, whose family lives up in Canada, has great stories about every time they cross the border. It really confuses the border guards as to what's going on with this dog. Sadie is a fairly new arrival to our facility. Sadie arrived last January on a cold winter day. Gentleman walked in our shelter and said he had a dog that he found, and we were pretty sure it was his dog. Brought her into our receiving and quickly determined she had a chain embedded in her neck. I know, I don't want to scare you. She could barely stand. She was so weak, and she had a chain embedded in her neck. Then we realized she was nursing puppies, but we didn't know where the puppies were. So Captain Evans, who was on duty, went out, talked to the finder, who lived in a jurisdiction that we didn't have the ability to go visit, tribal land. But Captain Evans talked him into going back to his residence with carriers and blankets. And about an hour later, gentleman returned with 10 four-week-old puppies. Mama, at that point in time, had been transported to the emergency hospital because, again, animal emergencies always happen on the weekends, where she was reunited with her puppies, all of whom have been adopted. Our veterinary clinic spent weeks working on Sadie's neck. And through it all, she was just a trooper. And she then decided that this Captain Evans character was a pretty good guy and she would go home with him. And that's really what we do at the Whatcom Humane Society. Any animal in need receives the care that they deserve, the respect that they deserve, the advocacy that they need. And before you leave here today, I would like to ask you to continue to support our programs, our life-saving programs for the 5,000 animals that are going to come through our doors. Pledge cards should have been passed out by now. If not, you can grab one from one of our volunteers or staff. And just to put it in perspective, a gift of $50 to our organization, that's food for the dogs or the cats for 1 week in our shelters, 1 week. $200 provides our farm facility with supplies for 1 month. And $500, spring is here, that means fawns at our wildlife center. $500 is supplies for our fawns for 1 month. So if you can continue to help us help the animals, we will make a commitment to you. We will be there for them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we appreciate your support. Well, again, I hope you all enjoyed being here as much as we enjoyed having you. On behalf of everyone at the Whatcom Humane Society, thank you and congratulations to our honorees. If I could get you all up for a group photo, that would be great. Have a wonderful afternoon and thank you so much.